Now that we've got our line work in, we're going to actually start to create a massing model. So what we're going to start to do now is reference some images of how the building was put together. Since we don't have a full set of construction documents, we want to just get an idea of what the building looks like. From Moodle Rooms, you can find a PowerPoint presentation that has some images of the Stahl house, and we'll be referring to these as we go through the project, and we may actually be adding more to it as we go. This first image tells us kind of a lot. This is actually a newer image. The catwalk here was added later so that it was easier to wash the windows. We'll be modeling an older version of the building, I believe. But this one gives us a really nice idea and sense of the masses of the model. To me, we've got the lower level, which is sort of this glassy mass. Then we've got a structure mass above that kind of kicks out or cantilevers over the windows. And then we have this heavy sort of roofing structure mass. And you can see those masses kind of identified in all of the exterior images as you work your way around the building. So what we're going to try and do is just familiarize ourselves with some basic modeling techniques and create a massing model of the project. And keep in mind, you can do this in a lot of different ways. I'm gonna try and show you a couple of them. One thing that works fairly well in a lot of cases is to work and draw from the ground up. I'm going to use my rectangular tool here. I've selected the rectangular tool. I'm going to work my way from the outside edge of the building, and we want to just create that glassy sort of mass. I'm not going to be horribly picky, but I'm going to come over here and I see I have a column that defines the exterior of the building. And I'm just going to get myself started so that I have some geometry to work with. So I've created a square that represents the interior of that glass. I'm going to use my selection tool now, and I want to turn that into a group sooner than later. I'm going to double click on it, and notice when you're clicking, if I single click, I select just the face. If I double click, I select the face and the lines that make up the face. After that, I'm going to right click, and I'm going to make a group. Once I've created my group, I can double click and open the group. From here, I'm going to use the push-pull tool, and I'm going to just lift this thing up and reference the outside edge of the building. So we're going right to the underside of the structure. You can see the two lines there that represent the beam. From there, we're going to just kind of push this mass out to the edge of the building so that we can start to explore or understand a little bit more how the building might actually have been put together. And again, this is not an exact science. We're trying to just get a feel for the building. Once I've got that basic mass in, I know that the mass extrudes here beyond the kitchen and the living room. It's kind of an L-shaped building. I'm going to come in and just reference and draw a line vertically. I'm going to click on the window frame and then drag my cursor up. I know that I'm going up because the line is blue. And once I do that, I can actually separate these two faces, which would allow me then to pull the other face forward to the edge of the other building. So that starts to give us a general sense of what that mass begins to look like. So for that example, I drew from the ground up. I'm going to show you another example where we're going to sort of draw sideways. In this case, what I'm going to do now is we're going to draw, we've got this heavy steel beam here that creates part of the building. I am going to come over here and we're going to draw basically on the vertical wall face, and I'm going to create a rectangle that identifies where that mass of structure is. Once I've got that rectangle put in, I want to do sort of the same thing that I did before. I want to create a group, because if I don't create a group, it'll connect itself to everything. So I'm going to double click, select the face and the edges, and I'm going to make another group. And just like before, I'm going to go ahead and open the group by double clicking, and I'm going to extrude that out. And notice how I'm extruding out this hidden line below in the plan. That represents the edge to where that roof structure, actually it doesn't, that's a lie. The beam structure comes out to the outside edge of the building, and we know that beam structure is right here. We'll get to the hidden line in the roof in a second. So what I want to do is hover out until it snaps on to the outside edge of my building. And that creates my beam. Just like we did for the lower section to create the L, I can come in here and separate these two faces at the joint in the building. Once I've done that, again, I can simply extrude that face all the way across. Now notice it stops at any existing geometry, so it stopped at the face of the glassy area below. But if you look, the beam continues further. So I'm going to just grab it again and stretch it out until it clicks or locks onto that exterior beam. So now I've created two of the three masses. I've got the glassy mass at the bottom, the beam or the structure that's holding up the roof, and the last piece that I need is the actual roof itself. So again, just like I did before, I'm going to draw on the vertical surface, and I'm going to select the top left corner and then come all the way over to the corner of my building and create another mass that represents the roof. Now again, don't forget, working in groups is a lifesaver. So before I get too far, I'm going to double click the face I just created, and it's going to select all of the interior and the lines. If you notice, the first time I double clicked, it didn't quite take it, and I just got the interior face. Notice how the black lines didn't turn blue? It's important to get all of the edges in the drawing. So I'm going to go through and make a group there, and then double click to open the group up. Now, get to the part that I skipped ahead to, I can extrude that roof structure, and I can extrude the roof structure all the way out to where it bumps into the line on the exterior. And notice if I hover over that line, it'll actually select it, and it says endpoint outside of the active area. It just gives me a reference to where the rest of the building is. I'm going to do something very similar to the other side, and we're going to continue to create that L shape for our roof. Unless my mouse is turning a little bit, it's doing an autosave. So we're going to let it do its autosave for a minute. I will show you how to change that, because as our models get bigger, it'll slow us down. So I'm going to draw a vertical line on top of my group, and that should, and you see how it didn't turn the right color? I could tell I was not drawing where I thought I was drawing. So I'm going to rotate my view just a little bit, and we want to try and separate this face. So I'm going to come back in and create that line vertically. And now you can see I did get the face separated. Sometimes SketchUp can be a little bit funny, and you've got to really think through what you're doing. All right, so now I'll come back through and we will pull our roof structure out. And I believe this one comes all the way down to this hidden line. Falls just short of the beam on this side. And if you notice, this edge also needs to come back out and extend to cover the lower line on the bottom edge. So this should start to represent our Stahl house. And I think if we were to take a look at the Photoshop images, or the images that we grabbed from the PowerPoint slide, you can start to see that L-shape mass with the roof cantilevering over the structure. And we're seeing both of those in our massing model. So before we get too far, let's make sure that we go ahead and save that file. And we're going to save it as a separate file. We'll do File, Save As. I'm going to go back to my save location. And this time I'm going to call this one Stahl Massing. And we'll make sure we're saving it as a SketchUp model and select Save. And now our next step will be to create the actual structure of the building.